Da, 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 da. Woohoo! Welcome to the playoff predictions, ladies and gentlemen. We are live, and we are just at least under 72 hours over to wildcard weekend. That's going to be having some important games, of course, that are going to decide who's going to make it over to the divisional round, who will disappoint, or who will be consistent, or who will exceed expectations. It's always a surprise whoever's going to make it out the first round, and probably that will determine the team's season if they don't make it. But besides that, there's been some dominant seasons, and there's been some underwhelming seasons. Over on Saturday, we will have, of course, the Seattle Seahawks facing off against the San Francisco 49ers. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they're the AFC South champions, facing off against the 5th seed Los Angeles Chargers. Then Sunday, we have the Miami Dolphins facing off against the Buffalo Bills in their third series in their divisional matchup. This time, it seems like it's one-sided the way the Bills look around the Bills look against the Miami Dolphins due to injuries. And the New York Giants versus the Minnesota Vikings. That's their second meeting over this season. Baltimore Ravens face off against the Cincinnati Bengals. They already have their series split in them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers face off against the Dallas Cowboys. That hasn't happened since the season opener of this season. So most of these teams have a familiarity to one another, especially for at least 3 of these playoff matchups to be divisional opponents. So some of these would hit hard to be a close one, or mainly over the defensive side of the ball if we know who they're missing. Now, for the San Francisco 49ers case, the only injuries we had have been over a secondary or allowance of yardage. We allowed over the Raiders to drop over 34 points with their second string quarterback after issues with Derek Carr. Even though, like our last game of the season, we only allowed over 13 points with the Arizona Cardinals. And we don't know what to get, of course. Brock Purdy's still new over his starting role, especially where he's not facing off against a lot of competitive matchups due to our Pro Bowl defense. Losing a Swiss Army knife out of Deebo Samuel, and of course a good running rotation with our highly conservative scheme. But we already have faced the Seattle Seahawks before. We kind of know what to expect over with Geno Smith, and Geno Smith having a great comeback season. Hell, he even broke what Russell Wilson could do in one season. Guys, we forgot that Geno Smith was literally already paraded over with a good offensive system like the Seattle Seahawks, while Wilson has been done with the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, a good tight end. The only thing that's holding out is their offensive line that Geno Smith can barely even withstand at least 2 seconds in the pocket without even trying to chuck over the ball up midfield. And I think the only issue is Tyler Lockett, because if you didn't watch our last series game against the Seattle Seahawks, we were actually locking down DK Metcalf. Charvarius Ward only allowed at least 3-4 completions around him, especially around the first half. And he was just getting in the head of everybody. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa was already being effective over to the blitz, and he's a high contender for Defensive Player of the Year. It could have been TJ Watt if he wasn't hurt earlier on the season. And we have at least top 5 defense in the league, and we're not even with a quarterback that average he doesn't record over 3,000 yards. So it just shows how dangerous we can be even off the short ball. And even when people undervalue Brock Purdy, he could get some good completions out there. He did drop around like 3 touchdown passes or 2 touchdown passes over to George Kittle. And Kittle's still one of the best red zone threats for a tight end. At least top 5 tight end in the NFL. I want to see more of the ball over to Brandon Ayuk. If we could stop a surplus of yardage for the Seahawks and just keep it to how we suffocate them over the backfield and just let Geno Smith pass, I think the Niners could actually pick up the victory here. I see this going to a 2-score deficit. Uh, yeah, that's how I see it. Then we got, of course, the Los Angeles Chargers facing off against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Probably over a gimme game to how piss poor the AFC South was for majority of the season. The Tennessee Titans been leading, even though they even was like beginning like 8-7, and the Jaguars just came back. So possibly the most fraudulent division ever, with only 2 teams fighting for a lottery pick, 1 team fighting out of quarterback injuries, losing their all-pro receiver out of A.J. Brown, and just lack of defensive depth over on the backfield, just choking out performances with questionable coaching. I can't see anything right about the Jaguars making it other than piss poor circumstances over a crap division. Doug Patterson has got some wins over his belt that really cleaned up the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm not denouncing that. Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence has been having a great sophomore season. He's been a good runner over the field. Etienne has been decent with Trayvon Walker at least being part of the defensive side of the ball, and the Jaguars can't sneak and make mistakes. And this is a different team from how they were last time in the playoffs after making the AFC Championship literally 9 seasons ago, 6 seasons ago, and they came over possibly. They started losing 5 straight. They lost to the Eagles, Colts, Texans, Giants, Broncos, and then they picked up over this massive win streak, with the only loss being against the Detroit Lions around the road, where they got shut out 40-14. So I'm not denouncing the Jaguars still won't lose, especially over mediocre competition. They beat the Cowboys of all teams, Baltimore Ravens, and their own division leader twice. And this was over in the second half of the season. Over most of the teams with a chip over their shoulder. At least I think the Jaguars have the biggest winning streak in the NFL. Over the Los Angeles Chargers, that's been supposedly at least, they've been at least a favored for postseason success beforehand over the offseason with the moves they made, and even with losing Mike Williams for a certain amount of time, or Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler still showing out over yardage play, or Justin Herbert just making short rookie mistakes over his reads, costing games that they should have won. But you gotta give it credit that at least there was some talking points, or at least some close ones over for the Chargers that they should have won games. But you can't question their defense. Deion Jones is probably one of the best harder hitters in the NFL. Herbert leads already in passing, completion, and yardage, and red zone touchdowns, especially Eckler. You are not stopping him in the red zone for the way their offensive line pursues around the midfield. You can't stop him. And Herbert can be a dual threat whenever he can, and having a cannon of an arm in that youth, especially with the weapons he got, it's going to be probably one of the most difficult times for the Jaguars to play some postseason football, and they're going to learn quick if they want to try to make it a consistency with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson and what he can do with this young core. But I have the Chargers winning. I think everybody got the Chargers winning by at least, I would say, around 3 scores. The Chargers I bet the Jaguars are only gonna get I see them around 17 points. Chargers could win by at least 31. Then we got the Buffalo Bills versus Miami Dolphins. Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins. This is their second meeting and the third meeting over the postseason this time. And the Bills, they have a lot of room to cover, bro. They have a lot of proving to do, even though Josh Allen has been impressive. He's also been unimpressive in his passing decisions as of late. After even doing it for DeMar Hamlin and Nasir came for like 2 kick return touchdowns, and he did throw like three passing touchdowns in an amazing game against the Patriots. Sometimes Josh Allen can make a split decision, like terrible read over the midfield, or chuck it over deep whenever he's trying to find Gabriel or Dawson Knox, trying to give it over to a corner route instead of just running it himself, even though he can do that. Now, one thing we know about the Dolphins, they have a young core that can actually blitz. The run stuff has been mediocre. Their secondary, I think people only know for Xavier Howard. Especially how they only allowed, 10 points off the Jets. But then they come over the Baltimore Ravens side and they allow 30-something points. And Dolphins did hold over their bargain, but look at how they are, guys. They haven't allowed less than 15 points on any of the offenses they played since opening week when they played the New England Patriots. I think Skylar Thompson is voted to still play, or they're going to put Teddy Bridgewater out, even though he's with a questionable knee injury. Bradley Chubb, Xavier Howard, Eric Rowe. A lot of these guys, especially Jalen Phillips, is, notable for their defense. Raheem Mostert, they're losing a lot of rushing depth. And if you guys didn't notice, Tyreek Hill was already suffering a bit of ankle. I bet he was faking it because he was getting covered well by Sauce Gardner. But guys, after their win against the Jets, these guys lost 6 straight. Tua or not, it's still an inexperienced receiving core. They can barely hold over leads. And I get that they were facing the Chargers, Niners, and the Bills in a 3-game road trip. 3 top seeding playoff teams, and then the struggling Packers that has as much defense as I have bitches, and of course the New England Patriots. That should be inexcusable if they're trying to garner any momentum against a team like the Buffalo Bills that's been on fire. And probably the most complete team ever, especially over their notable backfield. Now they got a blitz and a run stop that's probably the most consistent in the NFL. And of course, Josh Allen, that's possibly a league MVP. And it could have been Jalen Hurts if he didn't get hurt, literally. And Devin Singletary has showed out to be at least his improving rushing, being one of the most improved running backs. Because Buffalo Bills, a lot of people had complaints over the Bills' offense over their rushing. The Singletary could break out for at least yardage whenever the team is not doing well over, trying to shoot over the gaps. Singletary will take advantage. Special teams can now take advantage. So many ways that the Bills can attack you, especially with their quarterback. So, I have the Bills blowing them out. No doubt about it. There's no way the Miami Dolphins are prepared, especially with the quarterback issues, especially with their defensive plays. I feel like I don't like their coach also. Even if Tua was back on the lineup, this would still be Bills taking over the W. And we're back on the NFC side of things. We got the New York Giants facing off against the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings have been at least the second most fraudulent team in the NFL. There hasn't been a shutout performance since they faced the New York Giants. And I was complaining about this also. Because if it wasn't for circumstances, the Vikings wouldn't be touching at least a wild card round. Don't get me wrong, Justin Jefferson is still one of the best receivers of the NFL. Adam Thielen is still a threat. And they proceeded to break some records that never were presented to the NFL in years. So I'm not saying that the Vikings didn't have a great season, but they're probably the most fraudulent 13-4 NFL team I've seen. Even though they ended up, losing to the Detroit Lions, losing to the Dallas Cowboys, a fraudulent overtime victory over some BS missed calls in that great game they had against the Buffalo Bills. How they allowed a decisive 3-point deficit against the Commanders. None of these games they've had, except against the Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, have they ever took a dominant turn. And don't you dare talk about their game against the Eagles. I remember that commenter. I will have your... There's no convisive way to say that the Vikings are going to be this, heartstrong, especially over the New York Giants that have shown to really live up to expectation with their defense. Of the showing of, Thibodeau. I think secondary is mainly the Giants' issue when it comes to their injuries, or especially to their discipline. The way this is still like a young core for the Giants to work at. And what do you know? Like, the NFC East has to be probably the most surprising division, because most people say this would be a laughingstock, and the AFC West was going to show out. And guess what, guys? All three teams made the playoffs except the Commanders were just a game short. They were literally decided over the last week of the season. While the Giants, that kind of were on and off over the road game, only having some winnable games from the Commanders and the Colts. And picking up a tough one, even with their second-string quarterback, Davis Webb, and still closed out with a garbage time touchdown against the Eagles. They were just basic enough to close the season, because most of the other NFC teams, especially from the NFC South, were just allowing wins. And Daniel Jones will be able to play. So how can you denounce this, especially with, the only player that they're missing over that midfield is Leonard Williams. And of course their skill teams is still going to be probably an issue. And it hasn't been that long since December 24th since the Vikings played the Giants. So obviously offensively the only shot that the Giants have. Even though their defense has been very impressive, Saquon Barkley has been the backbone of their offense. They do have Matt Breida, and sometimes you don't know what to get out of Darius Slayton. Or even Sterling Shepard that hasn't even played. They've missed a lot of... And Kenny Galladay. That either he's going to be good or he's going to get some drop balls. I think it's going to be by a field goal. Vikings win. And then we got Baltimore Ravens versus Cincinnati Bengals. And Baltimore Ravens, we don't even know where Lamar Jackson is going to be 100%, guys. I'm not even trying to be pessimistic. Other than, DeAndre Robinson? Who is there on the Ravens? Don't get me wrong, I like Kenyon Drake. Anthony Brown. We don't know what to get from this Ravens team, guys. It's going to be a shutout against an AFC Championship opponent, and is already has a better record than them. What are you suspecting here, guys? Baltimore. I bet it's going to be by a 3 score. I bet at least 21-41. I bet that. Bengals outshine them health-wise, scheme-wise, and just a miscommunication over their receiving core with, Cincinnati's a great backfield. This is just going to be a mismatch in every implication. Over a double-digit lead, the Bengals are going to win. And then we got our last game. That's our season-opening rematch. The 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, a below 500 team led their division and pushed over for the playoffs out of the crap Saints, the crap Panthers, and the crap Falcons, even though they all ended with a 7-10 record. So they weren't even asked to the level to even tank. They were in the level of just being a mediocrely trying to push over for playoff with a lack of star talent on their roster. And of course, the Panthers had the worst of it with the way they dealt with the Baker Mayfield situation, losing Robbie Anderson as well. So I'm just expecting the worst. But Russell Gage has been the primordial option. Julio Jones has barely even completed. Their rushing has been iffy in the way they don't even start Leonard Fournette that much time. I guess they were trying to send him out so they can take some rest, but their defense is just so deplorable. The Buccaneers are just so mid. Brady can sometimes show out to have a great game, or could the Cowboys piss their leg? They just gotta win at least one playoff game to win everybody's expectations back. Well, at least try to convince, because their backfield. Because if it isn't for Mike Evans, Cowboys that are coming out as a worser seed, they're 5th seed, while the 8-9 Buccaneers are pushing over as 4th seed in the standings. So I don't even know how it's less favored, even though Brady is with a higher turnover rate than it's ever been. There's been games when he lost to divisional opponents that he lost by double digits, while the Cowboys, every time you think with the talent they got, especially after losing Amari Cooper to the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb has been the proverbial option, and sometimes he'll just have some miscommunicated reads. Dak Prescott can make some crappy touchdowns. Tony Pollard rushing, just rush the ball, kill him off that, and I bet it's going to be a 3-score lead that the Cowboys can beat the Buccaneers. I have nothing else to say. If you guys want to take this to the bank or not, doesn't matter to me. Thanks for watching the DST show. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and enjoy your weekend so we can watch this much football. And subscribe, like, comment, subscribe to the DST show. That's it for me.